The next topic is smart borders in context, learning from global experience. And with this in mind, we have invited 3 panelists to discuss some of the views regarding this. We have Mr. Kirko Gerritsen. I hope I got the name right. He's coming from Prodos Consultancy. He's the advisor to the Aruba government and the airport on the Happy Flow pilot. I know he also has experience from the Dutch administration regarding some interesting work that they did in Schiphol Airport. Our next panelist is Mr. Markus Klabian. He comes to us from the Austrian Institute of Technology. He is the project manager of EU-funded FastPass project, something similar what we had to do in our pilot. And last but not least is Mr. Aaron Vemery. He's a program manager from the US Department of Homeland Security Sciences and Technology Directorate. So with this order, let's give the floor to our first panelist to make a short presentation.
And my lessons learned from the past, not only being having my own company, but also working within the Ministry of Justice Department and doing all these projects, is scenarios are constantly shifting, and if we are not good equipped, and we are mainly not good equipped because we are not so very well in developing different scenarios. But we have to act on it, we have to respond on it, and we have, for example, after 9/11, we had the fear scenario, so the terrorism that took us in our hands. And after that, we saw the economic scenario that was full of chances, bringing in the people that you see on the top right position. We have to bring in those people because we are short of well-educated people in our countries in Europe. When I have a security access, including border control, who's doing what? So it's a confusing world. And then we have to get back to standardization, because when you have real standards, you can put the standards in place, and this is what you have to act on. We were used to evaluate people and their processes and the procedures, but we now put a machine in place. But how do you assess a machine? We don't know. What is Smart Borders about? It's in and out via standard rules, and standard rules is not only regulations, it's also technology. Standards are commercial interesting, I think. And if we don't do that, this will be the future. It will be very crowded everywhere. We cannot move any longer. I think we have a decrease from an economic perspective. So, and this is the end of my presentation. I want to appeal for very strong guidance on looking for standardization, and be smart, but act wiser. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tono, and thank you very much to EULISA for the invitation to be here and to present the FastPass project. Looking into the passport itself and passport checking is a big issue. The problem is the optical check. You have about 2,000 different valid travel documents that a passport reader need to be detected correctly. So the main problem here is how can you teach that, and how can, if there are some changes in the passport design, if this can really be done. Therefore, we looked into the variation in genuine passports and found out that the variation in genuine passports is quite huge, especially if you look into the UV field. To really build a quick and fast face capture, we built this based on a mirror system, and connect this also with capture in the near-infrared spectrum. This combination allows us to really make a very fast transition in an ABC gate, meaning that the people doesn't need to stop in front of the camera. So to end up, the FastPass system that we are developing is a system that is secure, resistant to the latest attacks, and to biometric spoofing. It comes with a risk assessment methodology, and is something that you will like. You is meant on the one hand the travelers, but also on the other hand the border guards. It will respect privacy and data protection. We have a dedicated impact assessment. It's harmonized and shows new processes. On the one hand side, we have a harmonized architecture, but on the other hand, we can serve very different processes. Okay, thanks for the attention. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Arun Vamori. I'm with the DHS Science and Technology Directorate. So within the U.S., for some of you, there's probably different levels of understanding about how we operate our systems in the U.S. Basically, we do have a current biometric entry system that we apply, and biometrics are collected at all U.S. airports. One of the things that we've stood up with as part of this program is specifically looking at airport operations in really two different modes. First of all, how do we make the entry process more efficient? Not just the biometric collection, but all aspects of operations. How do we get people through the queues more efficiently without compromising security? Basically, what we're trying to do is look in terms of how we use information, how we use process, and how we use technology. And is there a better way to get people through our immigration process when they first arrive into the United States? So one of the things we're trying to do here is not only incorporate what are the government requirements for how these systems should work, but what are the airport and the airline concerns as well? Because at the end of the day, what we recognize is airports aren't just ports of entry. They are very large regional employers that are located all over our country. They are huge economic engines, if you will, that help provide revenue to the local economies. And what we want to make sure that we do is when we start to put in these new operations, these new processes, we don't end up taking out the Starbucks and all the other shopping in order to put in a new government process, which adds to queues. That's not what we want to do. We want to figure out how we build in their interests and their business operations so we can most efficiently figure out how to get the information that the government needs, that DHS needs, but also allow business, airports and airlines to operate as closely to normal as possible. What's the future of the kiosk? Do we even want a kiosk in the future? How would we redesign this to actually get better performance out of these different systems? Changing things about how we handle baggage and the information around screening that information. And then better metrics. How do we know how many people are really in our spaces? Where are they going and are they moving through the process most efficiently? Are we creating bottlenecks in other parts of the process? And how do we get better information and know what's happening in real time? I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
The Smart Borders pilot is something I'd like to reflect on today, but it's not the topic of this panel. It is one input to the discussion and our discussion on how we evolve border management. My panellists, to introduce them very, very quickly, but I won't say much. They can introduce themselves as well. I'll start on the left, Mr. Pasi Nokalainen. He's a system manager at the Finnish Border Guard headquarters based in Helsinki. He's been involved for many years in deployment of technologies at the external borders of the EU that are in Finland, and has many, many years of experience prior to that, including in the European Commission as a seconded national expert, if I'm not mistaken. Pasi has also been the main technical project manager on the Finnish national Smart Borders pilot, so maybe he can bring something forward from there. Next in line we have Mr. Edgar Boigels. Edgar is from the Research and Development Unit of Frontex. In fact, he's the head of the Research and Development Unit. So I think many of you know the activities of that unit in terms of the documentation they produce on ABCs, on document reading, on the use of technologies in border control. And Edgar is heading all of that work, and obviously there's a lot of contributions have been made and a lot of information that has been assembled in this work that's very relevant for today's discussions. Finally, we have Mr. Valentin Niculescu. He's from the General Inspectorate of the Romanian Border Police. I don't have my document in front of me to have the exact title, but Head of Schengen. Head of Schengen and Procedures is the exact title. So a lot of experience coming from Romania and Romanian efforts to standardise themselves in terms of the Schengen border controls. Romania is also very, very active in research projects. One of those has been the Smart Borders pilot, where 2 different locations have been tested. Okay, so I don't want to say any more. I will turn over to each of the panellists in turn to lay out a couple of other points that they would potentially like to bring forward and add to the list that I've already outlined.
The Smart Borders pilot and the Smart Borders package and the entry-exit system playing and will in the future hopefully play a role in, but from my point of view for the border checks it is just one tool. This has been a long process. The entry-exit system and the RTP have been under preparation since something like 2007 now. So if we go to the future and how the border checks will evolve in the future, to me it's more automation, more information, accurate information, and getting it faster, and it means also pre-processing of the information.
Yeah, hello to everybody. Thank you to Elisa for have the opportunity to stay together over here. Pilot in Romania in 2 border crossing points, one road crossing point, another one railway, and some very practical findings. There was that in the railway border crossing point, it was a little bit difficult to take the data when the train was moving. We was trying to get feedback from the passengers. And it was like this, like 4 fingerprints, it's more useful than 8, because in the time, a little bit longer, it was not very good for them. And in the road crossing point, Skulen, it was very good, and all the passengers said that this one, it was very good, that they have a special lane for this pilot. We have to be more practical over here, even in Finland, even in Romania. It will be the passenger with the frozen finger coming over there.
When we talk about smart borders, it's only one element of border management. IT systems that support the work of border control, of the border guards. And we have these different IT systems in place. But what I miss is a kind of horizontal layer that is able, or that allows communication between the different systems. What I see with the different systems is that there's a lack of common data elements, for example, which makes it more difficult to have them talk to each other. Briefly, the topic of trafficking was touched upon. What are you going to do with the information? How are you going to find the victims? How are you going to find the traffickers? So it's not only about the knowns, it's about detecting the unknowns, because while you're focusing on the identified person that you already know and you see him cross the border, at the same time 10 others cross the border and you don't know about them. They just go. I just want to emphasize the need of doing the proper analysis, the need to identify patterns, because this is what we're talking about. This is how you discover the unknowns. Yeah, another hot topic these days is, and what about the irregular migration? So we have the nice system, nice names, whatever, and there's all these people that come in. In quite a lot of cases these days they are not registered, so we're just getting people here who we don't know who they are. If you ask me about the future of border control, I think that little by little we will see that border control is going to be a more kind of background process. I could easily imagine that within some time we will have more this on-the-fly concept, a walkthrough or whatsoever, and that you are being matched, your biometrics, against the information that is known about you. If I look to the increasing amount of people crossing the border, that we cannot, I mean, there's no other option. But of course, it is not going to be an automatic process, as somebody said this morning. It's still going to be a kind of automated process that's overseen by individuals. And still, individuals will be the ones who can intervene and say, in spite of the fact that you just walked through, I just still want to have a chat with you. Kieran, I would like to leave it there at this point.
I see the value of this conference, the value of those events that we have, not only looking into particularities of smart borders, but also trying to look beyond and in the future, and trying to start shaping up altogether the future of the border management in Europe. What is the ultimate objectives, where we want to drive border management in 10 years or 15 years time? We need a strategy. And that strategy should cover the business side, meaning how we are doing, how do we manage the borders, and the technology side, how through technology you can facilitate this development. The future border management, whatever it is, will require more powerful, more flexible, smarter information systems that can really adapt themselves towards the shifting demand or changing political priorities. Concluding here, I want to thank to all of you being here, to thank to our partners, the national teams, the vendors, the team of the agency who made it happen in that really short period of time. And I'm quite confident that once we have the final report, it will be a very useful tool